In the course of the last 17 and a half years YouTube has been around, the platform has seen the rise and fall of countless creators. From the earliest days of the website with the likes of Smosh, Fred, and Ray William Johnson, to the rise of gaming channels in the early and mid-2010s with PewDiePie, Tobuscus, Markiplier, and more. The landscape of YouTube has always been evolving, and very few are able to keep their content or brand the same as the years progress. Of the YouTubers just mentioned, most have either fallen into the realm of complete irrelevance, had controversy force them to more or less stop creating, or have just been lost to time. Even PewDiePie, the current most subscribed solo creator on the platform, has changed what his primary content is. I'd say only Markiplier through the years has managed to keep his content generally consistent. The downfall of channels such as Smosh or Tobuscus are for the most part easy to understand and can be summed up more or less in a single sentence. For most, Smosh died when Anthony left, and for Tobuscus, after the allegations many of his ex-girlfriends levied toward him, his channel and brand never really recovered. However, there is a legendary creator who over the span of his now 16 years on the website never once had any kind of controversy, never had the quality of his content dip, and never stopped giving it his all in everything he did. And, in my opinion, is still one of the most genuine and influential creators the site has ever seen and will ever see. And yet, in early 2020, seemingly fell off the face of the earth, that being the one and only Nigahiga.
Oh, hello there. I didn't see you come in. My name is Ryan Higa, also known as Ryan, but you can call me Ryan Higa for short.
To many kids who grew up in the 2000s, Nigahiga is likely one of the most nostalgic and important channels from their youth, and it's easy to see why. Ryan and his team, from their humble beginnings of just him and sometimes his friend Sean, were frequently putting out fast-paced and genuinely funny parody content and how-to videos, such as the famous How to Be Ninja, How to Be Gangster, and How to Be Emo, as well as the big bouncing inflatable green ball, and my personal favorite from that era, the Sham Woohoo.
Not the Sham Woohoo, it's called the Sham Woohoo! Say it like that.
As his popularity boomed, Ryan was able to quickly amass a large audience and the wealth needed to move to the Las Vegas area and grow his team to a much larger size. This in turn meant that the quality and consistency of his videos only continued to improve. For a brief period in 2008, Nigahiga became the most subscribed to channel on YouTube for a total of 12 days. Then, in August of 2009, he would once again achieve that top spot, and this time hold on to it for 617 days. 2010 saw the introduction of Dear Ryan, easily one of his most famous series on the channel. Around 2011, Ryan started uploading to his second channel, Higa TV, a channel with nearly 5 million subscribers in its own right. To many, the content on Higa TV may have been the primary way they watched Ryan, with series exclusive to that channel, such as Parkours, Cooking But Not Really, Teehee Time, and a lot of other vlog or behind-the-scenes content that showed us more of the day-to-day life of Ryan. As the years progressed and channels from the early mid-2000s began to lose steam and fade away, both of Ryan's channels were still going quite strong, as his team grew and content only got better. Comparing some of his earliest videos to what he and RHPC, the Ryan Higa production company, were making come the mid-2010s is truly staggering. Even in mid-2018, just before things started to slow down for Nigahiga, they were still making videos like the Nintendo Paper. If there's one thing that Ryan never failed at, it was surpassing expectations, as he and his crew consistently put in more work than was ever expected or needed to deliver content above and beyond anything else on the platform at the time. But nothing lasts forever, and come September of 2018, I think the beginning of the end of Nigahiga was properly set in motion.
Didn't wanna make this song emotional, but there's one last thing I need to know before you go. When the one eye goes left but the right side don't, I just need to know, can you see your own celebration?
I said earlier that it's generally easy to explain why some creators lose their steam or genuinely lose their relevance, and honestly that's a bit of an exaggeration. Anthony leaving Smosh, for instance, wasn't all it took to bring Smosh to the state it's in today. A lot of other stuff was going on that didn't help matters, and the same goes for Nigahiga. It wasn't one thing, but there is a pretty noticeable event that marks the beginning of the slowdown and burnout Nigahiga faced, and in my eyes, that was the departure of Sean Fujiyoshi. To many, myself included, outside of Ryan, Sean was the most important aspect of Nigahiga, and was generally kinda like the other half of the same coin when it came to the channel. So when in 2018, Sean suddenly announced that he'd be moving to LA and leaving RHPC behind, it came as a shock to many. I'd like to say right away that I don't think Sean should deserve any of the blame for Nigahiga essentially ending. Sean simply moved away to live with his now wife and pursue his true passion of engineering, which is commendable, and I think more than anything, we should be happy for him. It's just unfortunate that a potential side effect of his departure was the hastened death of Nigahiga as a channel. On both Nigahiga and Higa TV, Sean brought a lot of life and love to any video he was in, and his absence was very noticeable. I don't want to take away any credit from the other members of RHP when I say that. They all did amazing work on both channels and deserve immense respect for what they did. But there's no denying that to many, Sean was just kind of irreplaceable, which leads me to the next step in the decline of Nigahiga, that being Paco.
Because we don't know, like, did he get naked in front of you? We don't know, like, who knows what he's doing? Unpredictable.
Yeah.
I do a lot of dumb things, but usually, the situation is right. I'd say within the past year, I'm a lot better. Within the past year, I'm a lot better.
That one didn't age quite so well.
As the late 2010s were wrapping up, Paco, the newest addition to RHPC, started to become more and more prevalent in videos, and once Sean left, essentially became the de facto number 2 in terms of videos. Roles you would typically find Sean in were now being filled by Paco. Now, I don't want to discredit the good work Paco actually did while working for RHPC, as it's clear he was genuinely giving it his all. However, there was just a certain energy Paco gave off that I feel didn't really mesh well with the general vibe the rest of RHPC had. However, that certainly wasn't it. Around mid-2020, allegations and screenshots regarding Paco came to light, showing that he had pressured someone into sex, as well as a few other things. This didn't shine the best light on Ryan and the rest of RHPC, especially considering how prominent Paco had become within the team. And in general, it just kinda created a lot of issues and controversy for Ryan. It's kind of crazy to me how in all the years Ryan had been on YouTube, not once had he gotten into any real trouble, and just a couple years after getting Paco on the channel, something like this happened.
I didn't yell, but I was very upset. I was like, you need to say something, dude. Like, you have to put a statement out. You gotta tell me if this is not true, I can get behind you. Like, if this is not true, you need to deny it, and I will support you 100%. But he said, you know, there's some stuff that's not true, and some stuff is, and I can't, and I told him, well, I can't support you, bro. Like, this is disgusting. Like, this is not what I'm for.
Now, in the defense of Paco, while what he did was quite wrong, and it did not only damage the lives of the people involved, as well as the reputation of RHPC to an extent, he still isn't exactly the catalyst for what sparked the end of Nigahiga, as there's still 2 other big things that would lead to the channel's end. And in fact, the Paco incident more so cemented the end, as Nigahiga had already gone on hiatus at the time. If anything, it was kind of just a deterrent to ever go back.
I'm not quitting YouTube. Well, I didn't actually say that I was gonna quit, but you know, having the words quit and YouTube in the title, it kind of, you know, it's kind of clickbaity. But it's not, I promise. And at the same time, it's still not completely untrue. Let me explain.
Now, this may come as a shock to some, but most creative people don't like making the same kind of content forever, and it was pretty clear in the last couple years for Nigahiga that the same applied to Ryan. Ryan started Nigahiga as a young teenager, and he is now in his 30s. He said himself that the kind of things he found funny as a kid and the things he enjoyed doing, for the most part, he simply doesn't anymore. That's pretty obvious to see based on when he started his now defunct podcast, Off the Pill, as it marked an extreme decline in his traditional content, and it focused on far more mature topics and themes. Sadly, much like the rest of Nigahiga, Paco was a huge part of that podcast, so when he had to go, the podcast more or less had to go as well. This kinda left Ryan with not a whole lot of drive for what he could still make, as at the time, it seemed kinda clear that that was kinda the only thing Ryan enjoyed creating. I'm speaking from my own opinion here, but I think the sudden realization that maybe he was outgrowing his channel came when Sean left. Sean was a big part of Nigahiga as it blew up and became what it was, as well as a big part of Ryan's life and childhood. So I personally feel it's very possible that when Sean left to pursue his own career and life, that Ryan realized he too was outgrowing the YouTube scene. Ryan really describes it best in his video, My Midlife Crisis, when he ironically states he wasn't going to quit Nigahiga. So I suggest that you give that video a watch, as much of what I would say here would just be paraphrasing him. That now leaves the final push Ryan needed to simply put Nigahiga to rest. So, what was it?
Would you make a film for like a festival potentially? I mean, it's hard to say, because only recently, within like the past half year, since people got vaccinated and things are starting to normalize, that's even possible to start like going into production safely, right?
Now, some of you may recall in 2020 that whole global pandemic thing that was kicking around. Well, much like the production of movies, television, and more, the restrictions and health concerns also put a damper on the production for Nigahiga. In fact, the last video ever posted onto Nigahiga was at the start of the pandemic, and since then, nothing has come since. Higa TV had some virtual games with all of RHPC being played, but after the Paco incident, RHPC has never come back together again. Being confined at home, having restrictions on where they could and couldn't film, and just having to generally be very careful about seeing too many people, especially during the early days of the pandemic, meant that production essentially had to stop altogether. And for RHPC, no work means no money, so while Nigahiga was on hiatus, they had no real source of income, meaning they had no real option but to move on. Ryan obviously couldn't make Nigahiga videos alone again, as the whole brand had become pretty reliant on the extended cast and crew, and frankly that's if he even wanted to at that point. It really seems to me that the events of 2018 through 2020 was just the perfect storm needed to end Nigahiga. I know blaming the final straw on COVID might seem like a bit of a cop-out, as a bunch of other creators kept working during that time, but there's a difference. I find that the general quality and drive in most of those kinds of videos were just nothing compared to what the creators were doing beforehand. And while the way Nigahiga came to a close was seemingly anticlimactic, I'm honestly kinda happy it just stopped while it was still doing very well. We all know how horrible it is to see beloved things in our lives slowly get worse and worse, such as SpongeBob or The Simpsons, and frankly, I'm just happy we didn't have to see that with Nigahiga. Now, some of you may not know this, as I know I didn't, but Ryan still actually uploads on Higa TV, typically highlights from his Twitch streams. It's pretty odd seeing Ryan, a YouTuber who has amassed over 5 billion views on the platform, pulling only a few dozen thousand per video now, but honestly, as long as he's happy, that really doesn't matter. I do, of course, one day hope to see the return of Nigahiga and RHPC, but I'm not holding my breath. Whatever Ryan chooses to do in the future, if he chooses to make us a part of it, I will gladly come along for the journey. But for now, it's safe to say that the days of Nigahiga have come to an end. Which, sadly, marks the end of a glorious age for YouTube as a whole, and leaves a huge hole in the platform. I truly feel there will never be a creator like Nigahiga again, and he will be very missed.